Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. What I'll do, if you are, you should be looking at the Rutgers Center for Vector Biology page. We have a very good relationship with the university where we contract them to provide some of our mosquito surveillance reporting activities. And Dr. Lisa Reed is very instrumental in actually putting these data together for us. So what I'm going to do is kind of take you through this website while talking about the arbovirus disease or mosquito-borne disease that we experienced this season. To sum it up for you in a nutshell, it was rather uneventful and very welcome. So you go here, you click on surveillance. This is available publicly to anybody. And then you would click on the vector surveillance and then choose the week that you're interested in actually finding data on. So I'll just go to the most recent week that's on the web. Blow it up a little bit so it should be a little easier for you to see. And you can see the collaboration, along the top of the report that goes along with this information. But to date, in New Jersey in 2020, we have 6 positive EEE pools. All of them are in our amplification vector Culiceta melanura. On the West Nile front, we are actually at a record low for West Nile virus activity since we started monitoring for that. The vast majority of positive pools came out of our Culex mix, about 221 of that 229. Some in Culiceta melanura. We did get some in Aedes albopictus and Aedes canadensis. Interestingly, we picked up 6 positive Jamestown cannon virus pools. And the species that we picked them up in were likewise just as interesting. So Aedes cantata, Aedes tenurensis, Anopheles quadrimaculatus, and Cocotidia perturbans. So we'll be giving quite a bit of discussion in the coming months on that, just to see where that's going. With regard to animal activity, just one horse case that was in Atlantic County that were reported in EEE, none for West Nile virus. And on the human side, again, not that active, 3 human cases. We had some in Essex County and in Monmouth County. So that's kind of the summary of that report. And what I wanted to do is kind of scan down, highlight where some of those activities actually was in the state. And the EEE mosquitoes turned out to be at our traditional resting box locations. Atlantic County, again, 1 pool, and then in Winslow, Camden County. And I believe we actually picked up yet another EEE positive in Atlantic County that doesn't yet show on the report. It'll be in Lisa's next report that'll be forthcoming in a few days. Scanning down a little bit further, she puts up a bunch of different graphs. Here's a table of all the other mosquitoes that were tested for EEE and where those positives were. And you can see that there were in fact 3 that were picked up outside of those traditional resting box locations. Again, scanning down, we're looking here, I believe, at our West Nile virus activity and all the different mosquitoes that were tested along those lines. So a little over almost 7,000 pools in total so far, nearing 170,000 mosquitoes that ran through that system. You can see where that horse case was in the state, Atlantic County. Okay, with respect to the monitoring sites, these are what we call our traditional sites for Eastern equine encephalitis, so resting box locations. This graph shows where they are, what the populations were. The black bars were this season's populations, and then in this case, the blue boxes would be the 5-year, or it would be the average or the mean. They're different in all the different sites. So In this Bass River site, it's a 7-year mean. Green Bank, one of our sites we've been monitoring for a long time, a 29-year mean. And of course, the red arrows indicate where the positive mosquito pools, showed up. So the Corbin City 35-year worth of data is shown here, and what those populations were. And you can see the Malnora populations at this site were either below or at the normal populations for most of the reporting weeks. We had a few where the populations were a little bit above. Some of the sites way down, not showing much at all. And then at one of our inland sites, this is in Camden County now, it's been active over the past few years. 2 more positive pools we picked up, but low Malnora population. So interesting on that front. Moving a little further down this report, Lisa spends some time and she tries to accumulate all of the different EEE activity from around the country. And if you have time, going through this aspect of the report is actually really, really informative. You can see, states close to us, far away, what they're reporting, when they're reporting, and what those numbers are. And this changes on a week-by-week basis. So really interesting. Okay, now moving down a little bit further, we'll see the West Nile activity. The various species that were submitted for testing, this is statewide now, and then what those results were. When you see the positive pools, that she calculates MFIR to show what was going on, but not a heck of a lot on the West Nile front. Again, welcome this season, considering all the different challenges that we've been faced with. So here we go. We see our 221 in our Culex species. Those that separated out Culex pipiens and identified them, you can see we picked up another 4 there. And then the Culecina malnora positive that was noted on one of those earlier charts. So on the West Nile front, a little over 7,000 pools that went in, 174,000 mosquitoes that ran through that system. But again, very, very low West Nile virus activity. And this is probably the best take-home message on that, this chart right here. It shows the activity from 2009 all the way up to 2020. The 2020 is in fact this pink dotted line right there. And you can see we are at record low levels over this reporting period for West Nile virus. Again, very, very welcome considering all the different challenges that we've been dealing with that virus. There's a couple of links on here where you can actually, click, and that would take you to the individual county submissions. And it allows you to take a very, very close look at exactly where, that data was coming from. But on both the EEE side and the West Nile side, just not a ton of activity, which again, very, very welcome from our standpoint. Based on what we were seeing this year. Now, if you were paying attention when we went to that main page, there was also a link for the adult mosquito activity. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to click over on that. Again, I'll blow this up again. And this would be the New Jersey light trap data that all the counties participate in and submit data to Lisa again on a weekly basis. And then she puts together these reports on a weekly basis summarizing that activity. And this of course, is the most recent chart that's actually up there on the web. This first page, you scan through and you see what the activity is comparatively, for this period of time. Now, we also have the climate information on there, which comes in really, really useful. The counties that are participating in the week's collection. What winds up happening is this data tends to come in a little slow. So sometimes you're better off looking or waiting a week or so to get the best information because there's just more data available. But just scanning through this in the different regions in the state that we've broken down, you can get an idea of what those mosquito populations were collected in New Jersey light traps over the course of the season. So here we're looking at Aedes vexans, fresh floodwater species. The red line in this case is a 5-year mean or average, and it's a moving average, so it changes every year. You know, every time you add a new year's worth of data in, the oldest data from 5 years ago winds up dropping off. So looking at this, you can see for in the agricultural region, the Aedes vexans population started out relatively low. They eventually peaked up when we had our rainfall events, a little bit above our 5-year average, and then kind of came back down. And you can see what those activities were in the various regions of the state just by scanning through this graph. So again, from the control perspective, or understanding what was happening and then trying to tie it back into disease transmission, really, really useful information that is always available online. Taking a look at our culex populations, you see again a very different pattern in here. The populations were a little bit higher. The Delaware Bay Shore, Delaware River Basin, for a chunk of the season, culex populations were, at or above what our historical, average was. And again, you can see this information through the rest of the regions of the state. Each week, Lisa puts in comments kind of summarizing, what this bit of data is for pretty much the current week, but she leaves information on there before. And we have several different species that we like to monitor this information on. So you can see the Culecina melanura. We were talking about that a little bit earlier on the EEE side. And again, scanning all the various regions in the state, melanura populations, by and large, were below the historical averages. We do have an exception here in the north central region. Those populations were higher than what we've been seeing. And then there's a little bit of data in the Delaware River Basin. I'll talk later. I have a presentation where I'll touch on how this data came in this year and what some of those differences actually may have been. And then, of course, the Aedes sollicitans populations throughout. And again, the rainfall events that we had, were these floodwater species. There were periods of time where we were seeing relatively high populations, nuisance for the most part, that were, addressed at the county level based on the resources that they had available to them. So trying to mix it up a little bit, I figured, taking folks through some of these reports and using those to talk with might mix things up a little bit from the standard PowerPoint presentations. I hope you got something out of that. And I would encourage anybody to go ahead and take a look at these reports, throughout the season or whenever. We leave them up all the time because there is a ton of really useful information. And if you compare it to what's going on in your region, hopefully you get something useful out of it. With that, what I think I will do is I will turn it back to the moderator, and I will look forward to my next presentation, which should be coming up in a more traditional presentation format in a little bit.